Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. Now, we know that there are many reasons to stack physical gold and silver. Both metals are a long-term store of value. They're real money that can't be printed. Physical bullion, it lacks counterparty risks. They're shiny, of course. You know, this is all the traditional stuff that we frequently talk about. However, against today's backdrop of inflation and looming global conflict, rapidly rising debts and deficits, and even fifth-generational warfare that potentially includes cyber attacks on critical infrastructure such as our digital financial system, the role of precious metals as insurance against an SHTF scenario seems more critical than ever before. And today, we're going to discuss some of the bullion, some of the forms of physical precious metals that you might consider having in your stack as part of your preparations for a major or prolonged disaster scenario. Now, before we get started, I do just have to address a few points. First, for those of you who have rushed to leave me a comment, I am actually already aware of the fact that you cannot eat gold and silver. And look, I agree that stacking food and water and essentials, security devices, medical supplies, all of this stuff, yes, it's very important. In fact, these things should probably take priority over stacking gold and silver for SHTF. However, once your closet is packed full of freeze-dried food or Mylar bags full of rice or, Pop-Tarts, whatever type of calories you like to stack, and those other essentials are also taken care of, I still believe that it could be very helpful to have some physical gold and silver on hand for some of the crises that we may face in the coming years. True, precious metals might not be particularly helpful in a full-blown Mad Max-style disaster scenario, but the type of SHTF that we are actually likely to witness probably won't be of that magnitude. Now, don't get me wrong, a sovereign debt crisis, a hyperinflation, the loss of the dollar's world reserve status, a massive cyber attack shuttering the digital economy, a global war resulting in shattered supply chains and general impoverishment, none of these would be a picnic, but they wouldn't mean the end of the world either. So if such an event does take place, chances are most of us will still be around and will have to deal with the aftermath. And in such a scenario, holders of safe haven assets such as physical gold and silver, whether it be bars, coins, rounds, or maybe even some notes like these Goldbacks, aren't going to get out unscathed, but they may be insulated from the very worst effects, the economic effects at least, of such a disaster. And keep in mind, I have personally never lived through any kind of event even remotely close to what we might term SHTF, and most of you watching probably haven't either, although there may well be some of you out there who have lived through an economic collapse or a hyperinflation, because the truth is, these events are actually not that uncommon. And if you have and you don't mind sharing, leave a comment down below and tell us about it. Also, I do have to point out, none of this is financial advice. It's really just my speculation about the role gold and silver can play in preparedness. So let's get right into some of the pros and cons of various types of physical assets that one might want to hold as part of one's preps. And the first one isn't even metal. It's actually just Federal Reserve notes, cash, paper money outside of the banking system. And I think it's absolutely a good idea to have some of this stuff on hand. Sure, it's being devalued, it is losing purchasing power by the day, but it is also still the coin of the realm for the time being, and having a cash emergency fund on hand could prove to be very helpful if one day the ATMs stop working. In fact, I think it would be a little bit silly to start socking away silver bars and coins for an emergency without first having some physical US dollars on hand. But how much cash should we have? Well, the answer will be different for everyone, of course, but I think a good place to start is 1 month's household bills held in a mix of small denomination notes, because you don't want to count on anyone's ability to make change in a crisis. And with a cash emergency fund, should anything happen to those digits on a computer that represent all of your savings in the bank, well, you'll at least have a little bit of a buffer and some time to figure things out. But once you've got that cash set aside, what about real hard assets? The kind that have never gone to zero in thousands of years of monetary history. Well, US 90% silver coins are a pretty good place to start. In fact, this is probably the most common type of bullion that you're going to hear preppers mention, and with good reason. These coins represent fractional, highly divisible units of physical silver that are suitable for day-to-day transactions. Now, how do we know that? Well, silver coins like this $50 here were in fact the circulating currency in the United States for nearly 2 centuries, and they worked pretty well. But they're not perfect, and I want to address some common misconceptions that I frequently hear about 90% constitutional silver coins, also known as junk silver. Now, don't get me wrong. I like these coins a lot, and I've stacked plenty of them, but one thing I hear all the time from people in the stacking and preparedness communities is how recognizable these coins would be as hard money in a disaster, such as a massive dollar devaluation. But how recognizable are they really? I mean, what percentage of Americans currently have any clue about silver coins or monetary history? Perhaps junk silver was very recognizable in previous decades, but it has been 60 years since these coins were minted. And the percentage of the population that has known sound money firsthand is dwindling. So I don't take it for granted that most people would quickly recognize the difference between these 90% silver coins and the clad coins that circulate today. And another myth that I seem to hear frequently about junk silver is that counterfeiters don't ever bother with junk silver coins. The idea being that these coins are just too small to bother making copies of, and that any counterfeiter that is making fake US 90% silver coins is probably targeting key dates and making fake numismatic coins. Now, again, this is one of those things that may have been true in the past, but these days, a quick search on Temu or Alibaba or Wish.com or whatever Chinese knockoff merchandise website you prefer will reveal many listings for convincing junk silver counterfeits available for purchase for anyone who wants them. So you do have to be somewhat circumspect when stacking 90% junk silver. This shouldn't be too much of a concern if you're buying from a reputable dealer who will be able to spot and remove the vast majority of fake coins that do come through their doors. But one issue I could foresee is that in an economic crisis severe enough to lead to a reversion to precious metals as money, the fakes, they could start to come out of the woodwork, and that could shake the confidence of people in the authenticity of these coins. Nobody really knows how many of these fake coins have been imported into the US, and the numbers could very well be higher than we expect. So if you want a highly divisible bullion currency without the risk of counterfeits, one gold product that I really like are these Goldback notes. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the features of Goldbacks. I have other videos on the channel that focus on them if you want to get a bit of an overview, but here I want to delve into some of the specific aspects of Goldbacks that make them a great choice for the preppers among us. Basically, what these notes are is gold that has been atomically layered between two pieces of polymer material, forming a tough gold note suitable for circulation. And that's actually what these are designed to be: a circulating alternative hard money currency. Historically, silver coins have actually been the primary form of hard money for common people because gold is simply too dense a store of wealth for most purchases. But Goldbacks have solved that problem rather nicely by creating a gold bullion product, the Goldback, which contains only 1/1000th of a troy ounce of gold per unit. But how recognizable are Goldbacks? Well, if you live in Wyoming, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Dakota, or Utah, your state actually has its own unique Goldbacks, and you may well have seen some businesses that already accept them. And because of their familiar design in the form of a note with a numerical face value and a serial number, these things look like currency. I suspect that in the event of a dollar crisis or a major inflationary event, these things could actually catch on pretty quickly. I mentioned earlier that Goldbacks reduce the risk of counterfeits significantly, and that may actually be the best thing that Goldbacks have going for them in the context of this discussion. the machinery that makes these things, it took years and years and millions of dollars to develop, and let's just say that copying them would be far more difficult than counterfeiting bullion coins, bars, or rounds. In fact, I have never personally seen or heard tell of counterfeit Goldbacks, and even if they are out there with all of the security features that are built into the Goldback design, such as unique serial numbers, watermarks, etc., I suspect that they would be fairly easy to identify. Now, you may have heard some pushback regarding premiums on Goldbacks, and if you want to hear my full take on this, check out my other videos on the topic. But long story short, yeah, the premiums are high, but at least for now, you will get them back if you sell your Goldbacks. The market for these is very liquid. Some dealers are even offering a 0% spread on these, meaning that they'll buy them back for the same price that they sell them for. And I will just give you a word of caution. Check the recommended exchange rate on goldback.com and make sure you aren't paying too much over that, because some Goldbacks can be valued more highly due to rarity, fancy serial numbers, etc. And while that's great for collectors, it's not going to do you much good during SHTF. So should you turn your whole stack into Goldbacks? Well, I haven't done that yet, but it might be handy to have some on hand should you ever find yourself in a scenario where paper currency just won't buy very much anymore. What about all the other bullion, the bars, the rounds, the coins? Well, ultimately, in a serious SHTF scenario, especially the economic collapse variety, any form of gold or silver will serve as a vehicle for preserving wealth and storing value to the other side of a crisis. And while a 100-ounce silver bar or a 1-ounce gold coin might not be the most suitable form of hard money for small purchases, either of these would be a fine means of settling larger transactions. In fact, in some cases, they might even function better than small fractional bullion. For example, as you can see here, the current gold to silver ratio, this is courtesy of SD Bullion, is right around 87. And if you apply that number and you do some quick math, you will realize that a 1-ounce gold coin at today's prices is worth approximately 1,200 of these silver dimes. So think about it this way: in an environment where your counterparty may be skeptical of the authenticity of your bullion, what's easier to verify, a single gold coin or more than 1,000 of these tiny dimes? So in terms of your preparations, there's nothing wrong with stacking larger silver bars or ounces of gold. But if that's all you're stacking at the moment, you might want to add some of the smaller, more fractional stuff like junk silver or Goldbacks into the mix, just to cover all of your bases. And speaking of the gold to silver ratio as it relates to SHTF preparedness, this is one time that gold's more compact nature may make it significantly more appealing than silver. To the extent that you are ever forced to bug out and carry wealth on your person, gold is far better suited to this task than silver. So for the silver lovers out there, such as myself, this is a pretty compelling reason to at least have some gold as part of the stack as well. Those are just some of my thoughts on what types of gold and silver bullion are really suitable for having on hand as part of one's preparations. And while it may be a fairly low probability event that mankind reverts to conducting trade in physical gold or silver, it wouldn't be the first time that it's happened. And we know from historical cases that such a thing is not outside the realm of possibilities. Even as recently as 2 years ago, Bloomberg reported that in regions of Venezuela, residents had resorted to transacting in gold as a result of their hyperinflation. Now, it's true, they were also utilizing dollars and other fiat currencies, but the question is, what happens when the dollar is the currency that is being hyperinflated? What do you think? Do you ever consider these scenarios when you are doing your stacking? Leave a comment down below to let us know. Stay safe and happy stacking, everybody. I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.